Good morning, Ryan Nobles. You're the reason for Andrew. I'm just reminding you of that.
I forgot that I'm to blame for Andrew.
It is Ryan Nobles that actually recommended I bring Andrew on.
Yes.
And here we are.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
If we're talking, I'll tell you this. Right now, my poor wife is up in bed. I don't think she's officially been diagnosed with the flu, but she's certainly on the doorstep of it, and she did not get a flu shot this year. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Think of how worse it would have been if
one
she
piece
had.
of evidence.
Please. Although they are saying that they haven't completely nailed down the accuracy of this year's flu shot. Some you hear are telling you it's more accurate than ever. Others report that it's only about 35% accurate. So, but listen, you're increasing your chances of not getting the flu if you take the shot. So, Andrew, you're wrong.
Okay.
Just telling you. Ryan Nobles, good morning. Welcome to our S-hole. So, what is? I do have to say, Ryan, it was really shocking to hear that word being used, and I just kind of felt. Did you use it, by the way?
I never used it on television, but I did. I posted that on my Instagram. I was on television with the word superimposed over the bottom of the screen. So
yeah, that's
I never myself had to actually say the word on television. No.
But many on CNN did. I mean, it was somebody actually did the count. Actually, the funniest thing I've ever seen, well, not ever, but was a picture of the president sitting with Vladimir Putin, leaning into him and saying, "I bet I can make CNN say the S word about 100 times tomorrow." And Putin takes the bet, and look where we are today. So what are your thoughts on it all, Ryan? And we're arguing over, what are we arguing over right now? Is it the word that was said? Was it said? Wasn't it said? Lindsey Graham is really the lone Republican out there, implying anyway that something bad was said.
Well, I don't think there's any real question about whether or not it was said. I mean, I think that the pushback that you've seen is kind of a distraction technique by the president and the Republicans that were in the room. Was it whole or house? Was it in the proper context? I think they're trying to create more of a diversionary semantic argument here to just try and offer up some shred of doubt.
Yeah.
Whatever he really said, I don't think is as important as the sentiment behind it. And that, the question is, when he says that we don't want people to come from basically impoverished countries into our country, what is he saying about those people and those countries? And does it provide us a glimpse into his broader world view, which really shouldn't be all that much of a surprise? He's an America First guy. He thinks that we should tighten up the borders, kind of retreat into a bit of an isolationist posture. And that is consistent with his immigration views.
Yeah.
The bigger problem here is that it throws a big, big wrench into the negotiations over coming up with a solution when it comes to the DACA program. And it looked up until that meeting that they were actually heading in the right direction. And when he uses that kind of divisive rhetoric, it just makes those who would be willing to cut a deal say, maybe this isn't somebody I want to negotiate with.
Yeah.
And they walk away from the table. And then it further bleeds into the conversation over the government spending bill, which is due Friday at midnight. And at this point, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to come up with a deal in time to keep the government from being shut down. So there's obviously some drama associated with it, but there's real-world implications as well.
I saw one interview where a congressman believes that a deal will be struck, but it's going to be a temporary deal to take us maybe weeks or a few months down the road. What do you think?
Yeah, which is something that, I think that if they do come up with a deal by Friday night, it's going to be like that.
Yeah.
It's not going to be some sort of grand bargain that actually comes up with a legitimate spending plan that funds the military, takes care of the children's health insurance program, all these big things that are up for debate. I do think it's going to be something that's just going to delay the negotiations. But, Bill, I'm even skeptical that they're going to be able to pull that off. And I don't even necessarily think it's going to come, at this point at least, and, a lot can happen in 48 hours. I don't know if they even have enough Republican votes to get this bill over the finish line, let alone if the Democrats decide to play hardball and say that we're not going to support this unless you do something about DACA.
Yeah.
There's a good chance that the bill doesn't even get out of the House. If it doesn't get out of the House, then we don't even need to worry about the conversation in the Senate because you're going to need at least 10, Democratic votes in order to pass the spending plan. And last night, the House Freedom Caucus, which is kind of the hardline conservative group of Republicans, emerged and said that there isn't enough support in their caucus to even support a short-term plan. So I think there's going to be a lot of nervous people on Friday night on Capitol Hill, and I'm not sure what the outcome's going to be.
Well, I mean, is it possible that there could be a government shutdown and the Democrats play no role in it?
Oh, 100%. Bill.
I mean, that's I can't even believe that is possible.
Yeah, and that is why right now you don't see Democrats taking bold stands as to where they sit on this. They are holding their cards close to the vest. You can't get the Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer, to say that we're not going to support a bill unless the DACA fix is put in there. They're not even answering questions about it because they're waiting to see if the Republicans can get their act together to even send the bill to the Senate. There's no reason for them to get involved in that because if the Republicans can't come up with a plan to keep the government open, then the government stays shut down and it will be all on the Republicans and the Trump administration.
But wouldn't they come up with some temporary fix at that point?
You would think, but again, Bill, we've talked about this a lot. This is, an indication of how, the Republican Party still has many different parts that aren't necessarily all singing from the same play sheet. The House Freedom Caucus is sick of these continuing resolutions that, and, to their credit, they probably have a solid argument here. This isn't the way you govern by continuing to pass these short-term Band-Aids to keep the government open. That's not how you're supposed to budget, and they're sick of it. So, it's not as if their concerns are just should be ignored. This is part of the governing process, and you'd think that Republicans would just say, let's just get this done so we can deal with other things. But there's members of the House Freedom Caucus who ran on stopping this exact style of budgeting from happening. So at some point, they feel like they need to take a stand.
And meanwhile, we really haven't been talking about this at all. We're talking about the expletive. That's what has been talked about continuously for the last week. When what should be talked about is the fact that there's a looming shutdown out there.
Well, I think that the two things go hand in hand, and I think that people are talking about it. But I think that I feel like perhaps maybe people are talking about it too much. But then at the same time, the idea that you'd have a president make this kind of a comment under the context that he made it in an Oval Office meeting in front of a bipartisan group of senators when they're on the verge of hashing a big deal, I don't think it's something that you can ignore.
Yeah.
And then the fact that the White House tries to distract and lay some sort of doubt in what exactly happened, I just think speaks to a broader problem with this administration. The day before this comment came down, and I feel like, this is almost like Groundhog Day, you could have kind of make the argument that, the economy's in good shape. They might actually come up with a deal on immigration, that he'd actually get some funding for his border wall, and they're going to get the DACA fixed. Boy, this looks like it might happen. Yeah. Then this happens, and everything gets blown up again. And it just is the same cycle with this administration.
And even Lindsey Graham saying, where's the guy that just put Democrats and Republicans in the same room, and we had this on-camera negotiation last week that everybody was praising? Where's this guy? That president is gone now, and it's bickering and back to bickering and fighting.
Yeah, and there's kind of a weird wrinkle to this whole conversation, and that they're hardliners on immigration who have the president's ear, and that's Bob Goodlatte, who's a congressman from Virginia, and Tom Cotton, a senator from Arkansas,
and Fox and Friends.
Sorry, and, these guys
plays a role.
Found out.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, and Fox and Friends. That plays a role.
Right,
I really believe the president he's spoken to directly while watching TV. I think that.
Yeah, but even more specifically, like Cotton and Goodlatte and these guys found out that the president was going to meet with Graham in Durbin, Durbin, the Democrat from Illinois, and they hijacked the meeting. They showed up at the last second, talked to the president beforehand, and said, "Don't give in to these guys because we don't, First of all, those guys have no interest in keeping DACA going. They think DACA should end.
Right.
And they also don't want to give an inch on chain migration and the visa diversity lottery, and they want to build a wall. So, when you have these hardliners that have such an influence with the president, and a lot of times we see with President Trump, the last person who talks to him, and you're right, it might be the last cable news show that he watched, seems to have the biggest influence over how he handles the very next a proposition that's been presented in front of him.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where we are when we're talking next week. Will the government be shut down, or will a short-term deal be put together? I don't know how they put together anything other than a short-term deal, but we will see. It's going to be interesting.
Yep, and then we'll have this conversation all over again.
Yeah, that's right.
Another month.
Groundhog Day is just around the corner. All right,
Yeah.
Ryan. Thanks, man. We appreciate it. Enjoy your day.
You too, guys.
Ryan Nobles from CNN.